What's up, future shred lords? Looks like the Death of the Fingers vacation continues 2025. We're going to get into this tiered list with respect to guitar manufacturers. This might be important to people who are starting to get into it or want to buy a high-end guitar and have my stupid opinion on what I think is good. But of course, again, this is all subjective nonsense. So just get the guitar you want. Now, if you're looking for a laugh and you want to hear someone rant about some silly nonsense, all right, let's get into it. But, you know, take this video with a grain of salt and stuff like that, because some of my opinions are undoubtedly going to ruffle some feathers. So number one is and lowest on the list is going to be Gibsons and Fenders. And basically they're sort of just, I find that they're just instruments that are getting left in the dust of time. They're not evolving with the times, if you will. Now, it's not to say that they're not good instruments, but they're limited in their sonic range. They're expensive. They are mass-produced in a certain respect. And honestly, the build quality's gone down, and you can see that. So that's why they end up being last on the list, is because essentially the company is more focused on profits and milking the name for those profits than they are just putting out a really, really killer instrument like they used to in the back in the day. Like back in the day, obviously that was one of the few choices you had to get an electric guitar. And that's just not true today. So because of that very fact, you have to compete on other sort of metrics, and they're not doing that. There are way better guitars out there for the same price, way better. So, you know, it is what it is. So unless you're really, really in love with this particular instrument because it's attached to your favorite artist or whatever it is, or sound, okay, do your thing. No one's ever going to change your mind. But if you're objectively looking at the situation, you're going to be like, well, you know, $8,000 for a Fender? No. Next on the list is going to be like the Ibanez's, the BC Riches. You've got Kramer's. That whole tier there from the 80s, if you will. They're good guitars. They really are. And honestly, for starter sort of guitars, I don't think you could actually ask. Solar's going to be in there too, from one of the newer ones. They're solid guitars. They get the job done, but again, you're talking about what I call a mid-tier instrument. Even their higher-end stuff is only going to be average comparably. So having said that, their issue is really just the genericism of it, right? They're all 5 selector switch guitars with like volume and tone. And sure, you can sort of start to diversify and whatnot, but you're tacking on a significant amount of price when you can just get that built in the first place with a signature guitar that's going to be actually cheaper. Right? The more you try to customize this more average one to give it the functionality that you actually want, you could buy this other guitar over here altogether and get all that functionality already built into the guitar. So why spend the extra money? Right, to get a custom shop situation. So again, if you had $8,000 to spend on a guitar, are you going to buy something from Ibanez or something from Kiesel? Or one of the other ones we're going to talk about. And that's just a fact, because you're going to, you know, contact Kiesel or whoever it is, Ormsby or whatever, and effectively sit down with them and design your perfect guitar. Whereas you're going to go on the site there, on Ibanez's website for the most part, and I'm sure they do custom shop too, but why? I'm just like, you know, why? You're talking about a specialized group, team, if you will, of people at these boutique guitar shops that in a lot of ways, they're like the best of the best, because all they do is produce really, really high quality ones. And yes, there's always going to be the sort of situation where you have people that disagree and the customer service wasn't there or this, that, whatever else. But overall, I believe that they have a very, very high sort of satisfaction rate. So That's why I'm saying that. And Ibanez has the same issue with the customer service and build quality with respect to their instruments. It's just, you're talking about prestige now, you know what I mean? And Ibanez is more of a lower shelf name because they produce more budget level guitars, and they're more interested in just blanketing the market. And then some of their guitars, I remember when they wanted $10,000 for like the Meshuggah Signature Series, which was an 8-string, which I ended up buying their 8-string later on when it came out and was mass produced for like $800, which is over there, is right back there. You can see it right there. And I put the Tosin Abasi EMGXs in it, and I also have a blackout in there. So, you know, it's just 10,000 versus 800. Oh, okay. It's basically the same guitar, man, right? And I'm going to completely deconstruct that thing and just use it to build a new guitar just with that body and neck and stuff. So that was always kind of the plan, but I got sidetracked doing some other stuff. It is what it is. But you get the idea there. So moving up the tier list now, you're into like the Paul Reed Smith. This is Parker Fly territory. Some of the more but older boutique names. There's quite a few of them in there. But you get the idea. The build quality is going to be higher than what you're going to get at Ibanez and BC Rich and all the rest of that stuff. But there's also the price tag to go with it. But the guitars are nicer. You know, there's a lot of people that like the Paul Reed Smiths and whatnot. And I have to admit, as far as the aesthetics of the guitar is concerned, and I'm sure they play just fine if you're interested in that sound, man, they are really nice. They are really nice guitars. Like, and same with the Parker Fly. That is one guitar I actually want. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's just something about that guitar looks cool, to me at least. So I've always wanted one, and maybe one day I'll get lucky enough and I'll be able to snag one. But that's another sort of example where it's just this really interesting guitar sort of design, and it sounds cool too. So win-win. But that's the next tier, you know, because essentially you're getting all of the advantages of the Ibanez, but now you're really getting a guitar, aesthetically speaking, that just takes it to the next level, which gets us, just bumps us right up, obviously, to the next level, which is going to be like your more boutique guitars, your Ormsby's, the Kiesels, there's Lituria, there's also known as Arctic guitars outside of Italy, some of the sickest guitars I've ever seen. He's got a real thing for the Lord of the Rings. And man, holy smokes, his guitars are just devastating. If you like that super Strat, you know, hot rodded, but just jaw dropping. Now, I don't know what the cost is on those. They're probably expensive. But oh my God, that's one of the nicest guitars I've ever seen. Collection of guitars too. Basically a whole bunch of them that you're just like, what? Damn. Right. And of course, the same could be said about Kiesel and a couple of those other ones. I saw a whole spread yesterday on Mayon's and Ormsby, and they were both just wow. The custom shop stuff, not just what you get on the internet. I mean, the custom shop stuff where you're talking 5, 6, 7 grand. That's why they go up notches, because now you're actively involved in the process. And you're getting like an absolute Ferrari of a guitar. This thing is ferocious. Just a beast on every level. Every aspect of the guitar really just lovingly caressed by the people that put it together, and with an absolute encyclopedic knowledge of guitars and their setup, and just a situation where you take it out of the box and you just play it. I saw one a few months ago, I think, with Alex Hutchinson, where he took out his new guitar from one, I think it was Mayon. I can't remember exactly though. Don't quote me on it. And he was just like, it's just perfect out of the box. Pretty good. And even the $3,000 to $4,000 guitar, which is a significant step down from the costs we were talking about, are just absolutely jaw dropping too. It's not like, you know, when you're getting up into the high ranges, now you're selecting every aspect of the guitar. It's everything is to your spec, which requires some advanced knowledge of what you should be doing and expecting and whatnot. So ultimately that's the difference between the $3,000 model, which is just pre-built, and you're like, yeah, do it up, and then you're like, nah, I want something that is absolutely specific to me and how I play and how my rig is set up and all the rest of that stuff and how I like to configure the instrument. Done. And of course, the last step is, in my opinion, sort of like the final evolution of the guitar. I saw a couple clips, and it was the Ernie Ball Majesty, the John Petrucci Signature Series guitar. Now, there was an 8-string version with a piezo pickup, the whole 9 yards. And I was just like, man, that is basically the ultimate guitar. You could plug it into a synth. You can run it into an effects modeler and basically have any sound you want. And of course, you have, with the synth aspect, you could also take that out and run it MIDI if you wanted to, or run it as an output, piezo-wise, into the input of your DAW, and then just capture that as a raw signal so that you could reamp later on. So there's just like, you wouldn't have to do that as taking something out of your processor. You could come directly out of the guitar now as a piezo signal. And that would probably be very useful, especially if you have a nice sort of interface, you know, like an RME that has a whole bunch of extra effects and front end on it, so you could compress that signal and shape it as a clean sound going into the DAW, so that when you did reamp it, it didn't need a whole bunch of extra surgery and stuff like that. But this guitar was, the reason that's at the top of the list is because it just has the sheer amount of sonic variation. It has 8 strings, but you could go down to 6 strings. And it's designed effectively to, you know, satisfy every niche. Like, there's not a single aspect of music that Dream Theater hasn't touched on, from like really crushing heavies to the most airy of lights, if you will, you know what I mean? Like, they've just covered everything. So you know that this guitar is going to be designed to cover every aspect, from the luscious cleans to the most fattest and defined lows with distortion and whatnot. Because John wouldn't brook any sort of compromise to the sound. Like, that's a dude that's going to walk in there and know instantaneously if this thing is cutting the cheese or not. So that's a really important distinction there, is not only are you buying this guitar, but you're getting essentially the cumulative knowledge of this guitar player. And that's why also I put Ernie Ball at the top of the list, is they have a couple signature models that also satisfy. The Steve Morse one, I talked about it before. Now this one's been around for a while. So think of all the refinements they've made to that instrument over the years with the pickups and configurations. Again, Steve Morse, another effective genius of the instrument, not just in terms of playing it, but also in terms of arranging sounds coming from amps or whatever else. I mean, he was the first guy to really show me that you could start to blend in effects and whatnot. And I just saw a video yesterday with another guy. I think it was Andy Wood. That was it, the Rick Beato video, where he does an interview with them. He does the exact same thing. Now, he does it slightly differently, but the exact same principle. It lets you put how much of the effect you want in there. That's obviously very, very useful. And I saw that in like 1990 with Steve Morse, where when the power lines, I think it is 2. It's right in there. So I'm just like, damn, that's pretty influential, man. I mean, you kind of lay it down there, and then you have guitar players in the modern age basically using the exact same principles. So again, if you're sort of throwing out those pearls of wisdom with respect to amp setups, you can pretty much guarantee the guitar is going to be just as killer. And there's lots of them. If you're into like country music, but you're like, I want to branch out, you've got the Albert Lee stuff. Like, at the end of the day, I think people get hung up on the aesthetic of the guitar instead of understanding its function. You know what I mean? You'll start to love how your guitar looks when you start to love how it plays. And then you won't really care because you'll be like, it just gets the job done. That's why I have the Korn Signature Series one, because at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't care if it's this guy from Korn's guitar that doesn't do a single solo at all. It has all the stuff that I need. So just go. Right? There it is. And it was cheap-ish, you know, which is hilarious. Again, I dropped 2 G's, and like when I looked at it maybe last year or something, it dropped down to like $700. So don't think the guitars are investments. It's a tool. It's a tool that you're going to use and sort of refine your skill set. And then as you sort of grow as a musician, your needs are going to change. So you might switch guitars or brands or whatever it is, because you're like, I'm really into this band and they use this instrument and they're using this setup and stuff, and I kind of want that sound too. That's perfectly normal. So you might switch over to a Paul Reed Smith or an Ibanez or something else. What I'm saying, though, ultimately is that if you're going to spend a lot of money, then try to find the way that you're the most involved with the actual design of the instrument, unless there's no budget, in which case, you know, I would go for the Bugatti, you know, the creme de la creme of the guitar world, which is going to be this, the Majesty, especially with the piezo pickup, or any guitar. No, I'm not going to say that. Just the Majesty. It's a work of art and a beast of an instrument. And I've not heard one bad recording from John Petrucci. Doesn't matter what it is. So he's been using this guitar for a long time. In 2025, this is the penultimate guitar for anybody to own. If you're looking for a studio or touring rig where it just has the maximum number of options, then it's just up to you to learn how to use it creatively to get the most out of it. So there it is, the tiered list. You know, down at the bottom, you got the Gibson and the Fenders. They just haven't kept up with the times. Then you're into the mass-produced stuff, you know, the Kramers, the Ibanez's, BC Rich, and all the rest of that stuff. Then you're into, you know, effectively the Paul Reed Smith, which is like what I call a step up from the Ibanez. It's still kind of mass-produced in certain respects, but a lot of their boutique stuff is just phenomenal, and it is a really nice guitar. Then from there, you're up into the fully customizable range with Kiesel and Ormsby and Mayonnaise and all the rest of them Ormsby. Didn't I say that twice? Nice. Okay, anyways. And then, of course, after that, you're just moving up to one that is a guitar that is designed by basically a genius guitarist. So not only are you getting the instrument designed that's ergonomic, played by a guy that can just absolutely destroy it, but is, you know, survived the test of time on countless tours, right? And has basically been sort of had this person pour all of their knowledge with touring and recording and everything else, and covering the entire spectrum of music and pouring all of that experience into the design of this guitar, which is why it's at the top of the list. And then you can just, and that can be true about a lot of things. You could use that philosophy, obviously, to choose a different signature model that might more sort of be more in line with what it is that you want to accomplish, because obviously there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If there's a guy out there you want to be like, I want to sound like Jeff Loomis. Wow. You know what I mean? For me personally, it wouldn't sound like I was John Petrucci, of course, because I don't use his type of rig. But the guitar itself would be a necessity if you wanted to sound more like him with a mezzo-bouille. So, but take that away, you know, the Jeff Loomis is going to be just slightly less configurable because he doesn't really do that kind of music as much than the Majesty. And that's just going to be a fact. That guitar is designed to cover a much broader spectrum of music because that's what Dream Theater does. This one really specializes in metal, which has some clean stuff, but for the most part is designed to be very, very crispy. So there it is, my silly little tiered guitar list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. I hope maybe even possibly it might have given you some insight into potentially getting a new instrument if you're doing that thing. But again, try to temper your expectations with real world costs. No guitar is worth $8,000. No guitar is really worth $5,000. So try to find the happy marriage of like a really nice instrument with a broad spectrum of sounds that is made by a reputable company for a reasonable price in like the $2,000 to $3,000 range that will tick off all the boxes with respect to the music that you're making. Don't just buy a guitar because your guitar idol plays it. Just get the one that's going to be the most usable to you in every practical situation, which I think is way overlooked. Funny how that works out. Thanks for joining me. See you in the next one.